But welcome everybody. This is an amazing panel. I mean, we have some really stellar people on here. Uh, very happy to have you guys here. I think what we'll do is we'll start out by introducing or having the different panelists introduce themselves. And I think since on my screen, Halldora is first, so I will have her start.
Okay, I'm Halldora, and I live in Aquaterra, and I'm not really much of a consort anymore since my husband's not in the SCA anymore, but I've got some strong opinions, so here I am.
Thank you, Halldora.
Thank you.
Mary Grace is leaning forward, so
Stopped multitasking on my other screens. I was like, I should pay attention now. My name might be called. Hi, yep. I'm Mary Grace of many kingdoms. I originally started in Maria's before Glenavon became Glenavon. Moved to Atlantia, found a fellow I sort of liked there, and we got together. And so we lived together in Atlantia and Drachenwald and Glenavon and on Tyr. Basically in Canada, we're very close to the border of Tyr, and he was knighted in the West, in the far West actually. So we have ties to many kingdoms. So but we are currently back in Atlantia. So that's me.
Thank you and welcome. And Feia?
Hi, I'm Feia, and I live in the Kingdom of Artemisia in a northern Utah barony called the Barony of Griffin's Lair. And I have been in the SCA for actually my SCA anniversary event was yesterday, so I've been in the SCA now for 18 years and got to go to the exact same place that my first event was ever at, so that's kind of cool. I also play in the Kingdom of Ontir because that is where my fighter is at, and like her Grace said, I met a boy, he was cute, sort of followed him around a bit, and I have experience being a consort. I've been his consort now for 7 years. I was a consort to a previous relationship, and I have been a day consort. Hey, I need somebody to fight for, so many times. And also I have a lot of opinions about being a consort, so I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. And Eduardo?
Hey, I'm Eduardo. I started the SCA 40 years ago in the Kingdom of Atlantia. I was there for college, but I lived in Ontir, so I came back to Ontir, and most of my SCA experiences in Ontir, especially from a consort perspective. I've also lived in Caid, but we won't mention that. And I have varying experiences, just like Feia, about being a day consort. Also, being a consort to a very close friend of mine who's now the Queen of Ontir. I was her consort for a long period of time, and now I'm my husband's consort. I was also one of the leaders in the inspirational equality movement. I'll just say that. And so I have lots of opinions about consorts as well. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. And you know that is why I invited you all. I mean, just I know you all have very strong opinions on it, and you just inspire me as consorts. Yeah, so that's what brings us here, is what it means to be a consort. I don't know. Do we have a good way to start this off with the first question? I mean, it's pretty hard just to say, well, what does it mean to be a consort?
So maybe I can start by just saying I think that you do have three very outspoken panelists, but I think that probably one thing that we agree on, or could agree on, or should talk about, is that being a consort, being anyone's consort, is a very personal relationship. It's going to be different for every single relationship and every single person. And that if you start with that precept, if you start with the fact that it's not going to be the same as the last time I was consort to somebody, or it's not going to be the same as when I'm going to be consort to somebody else, and you take it as a personal relationship and have those kinds of discussions with you and your fighter, that's the best place to start, I think.
I agree. I absolutely do agree that I actually funny. I know I was saying this earlier that I do a lot of TikTok, and I may have responded to a TikTok rant the other day from an individual in Anstiora about consorting, and one of the biggest things and that I said, and I still stand by this, is consorting is communication. The definition of it is going to change, and it doesn't just change relationship by relationship, it also changes event by event. That is a huge conversation, and I don't care if you've been married for 85 years or you just decided to do this for a day. Consorting and champion consort relationship has to be about communication for it to be effective, and this is a big thing I'm going to say, for it to be mutually beneficial. Because if you're not having those conversations, it's going to be very quickly for a consort to not want to do it anymore. So I think it's, for me, that's a huge part of it. And I hope that's kind of, I know that's where Eduardo was we were starting to talk about that, is that communication piece is just so gigantic. And if you're not having those conversations, let me tell you, start doing it now. So
I can hop in. It to some degree, it depends on, what the tournament is for, right? Is it a baronial champion? Is it cornet? Is, because there are implications to, what happens at the end of that tournament. And so part of that communication has to be sitting down with the person and agreeing on should you be successful in, this tournament, whatever that outcome is. How is this going to work? How are we going to make decisions? What is my responsibility versus your responsibility? And I have only been consort to my husband, but after 3 reigns, I threw a baroness in the way, and he fought for someone that was not me. And so one of the things we did with those individuals, we all sat down together and we had this conversation about, okay, what is this going to look like? And this is different as well, because I have been his consort, I'm his spouse, but I'm not going to be queen if he wins, right? And so, like, I'm going to step back and, how do you want me to help you? And so I have seen, and I'm sure other people here have seen, individuals who have not had those conversations and have proved successful in the tournament. And I have seen it ruin relationships, either whether they were romantic or just friend relationships, because they were not on the same page prior to, the end of that tournament. And so it's very important that if you can't have those fundamental agreements on certain things, then it's probably not a great relationship for you, and that's okay, right? But you will regret it later. And to your point, it could change. My husband fought multiple times, and we have a sit down every single time. Okay, so if you win this one, what do you want to do? Who should we think about, to help us with this? We have that conversation every time. And it's funny because people say, oh, it must get easier when he gets to the finals. And I'm like, no, the first time I had no idea. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a princess. It gets, I feel more responsibility each opportunity that I get to do the best job that I possibly can. So that is at the beginning of your relationship, that's the most important thing that you can do.
So you were talking about, like, he had fought for someone else at one point in time. My husband had also fought for someone else in a crown at one point in time since we've been married, because I couldn't go to the event and he wanted to fight. So, like, because we knew that was going to happen sometimes, or I was not going to be able to go to an event and he would want to go to an event, we actually, like, put together, like, a list of people I would be okay taking my place. And so, like, we do have, like, a list of people who I would not have any problems with at all if they, like, took my place, and, like, he possibly could have won, because the one time he did not fight for me, he did actually do a really, really, really good job. And people were texting me like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. It's going to be okay. Because I trust that person and I don't have an issue with this person at all. And we talked about it like a week and a half before the event started, when I found out I couldn't go to the event. So it was all good.
Another thing I think that is sort of implicit in the title of this class, but it we need to sort of unpack it a little bit, is that it's how to be a good consort, but it's a two-way street, right? Like you can be the best consort possible, but you've got a relation, it's a relationship and it's a communication, like everybody said. So really, I would like to see more fighters here as well, because it's really, you can't be the best consort you can be without having the best fighter that you have as well. It's a two-way street.
Oh yeah.
Can I chime in as a fighter?
What's up?
Can I chime in as a fighter and having fought in Crown?
Oh yeah, please do.
My wife, who was my consort, she made a point of reminding me it isn't just about us either. It's about the populace. And I may want to do a thing, but she said, no, you can't do that thing because you might ruin somebody, like a mass of people's medieval moment doing said thing. So yeah, it's all about the populace too. So, and sometimes they say really smart things.
Thank you, Moon. Yeah, and I think the conversation has got to be a little bit different depending on what the job is at the end of the tournament. Is if you're a consort to a champion, well, yeah, there might be some responsibilities. It is not nearly the same as if there is a crown or a coronet at the end. Which kind of brings me back. I mean, how do you define what a consort actually is? Give that to Feia.
I literally I unmuted and I was like, I mean, the short answer is the supportive companion of any fighter. It in very easy SCA terms, when we say consort, it is the supportive companion of a fighter. Society wise, that ends up so often the connotation ends up being a romantic relationship, which I'm happy to see us break that away and it not be a thing anymore, because it, especially, and I'll explain, in Artemisia, we're a very small kingdom. We are the smallest populated kingdom in the known world. Okay, most champion and consort relationships are relational. They are all usually married couples. We do not have a lot of opportunity for people who aren't in relationships to fulfill that sort of role as a consort, because there's not enough fighters to go around, to be honest with you, and none of them are single. So this is why you go out of kingdom and find hot guys. But I don't even know if he's in here yet. I told him to come watch. So if he is, great. If not, okay. But that's the short answer, is that traditionally and society for such a long time, it was a supportive companion, usually romantic, of any fighter. We have kicked that definition the hell out. And now it is really any companion of any person, whether it be romantic or not, who is lending support in an endeavor in the SCA. Because we all know you can also have a consort who is your consort for your arts and sciences, for your services, for anything else. And now we are starting to change that term to a consort is just anyone who provides support for your endeavor. Tell me if I'm wrong. Come on, get in there.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, if you're going to put your name in the hat for Kingdom Seneschal, it's the same kind of conversation, right? Like, hey, this is going to change how I play the game. Are you okay with that, right?
Yes.
And if you've got your support system, like if I'm going to be putting my name in for, arts and science champion, anything like that, you need the folks that are your support system, whether they be romantic or, friends or whatever, to be on board with how that's going to change your game. I totally agree.
Yeah. The last, when they're at the time, Prince and Princess Damon and Veronique won their last crown tournament just before pandemic. We didn't go to the crown tournament, and they called me and asked if I would be their herald. And they live in Montana and I live in Utah, and that's going to be a huge thing. And I made 2 phone calls right quick. I called my mom because I was like, I'm gonna need some babysitting. And then I called Casimir and I was like, this is going to be a huge endeavor for the next 10 months that I have to commit to, which means a lot of not being able to travel up to on tier. I'll have to spend more time in my own kingdom and doing all these things. Are you okay with it? And do you support it? Because again, it was the this is my endeavor and I'm going to need that support as well. And then pandemic happened, and I don't think he realized what he was getting into. And we got a, can I make a statement? Of course, Your Majesty.
Eckhart from Atlanta, in case anybody doesn't know. When Her Majesty and I set our crown tournament, one of the things that we asked of the populace was for them to find someone who they would champion that day, whether they were romantically involved or not, just somebody who inspired them that they wanted to give the day to. Because in my mind, you know, it's the fighter's job to find somebody who inspires them to give them that day, because until the day is over, that person is a potential princess, bar none. So whether you have 13 like in our crown, or if you have 100, every one of those consorts, I mean, they feel like $1 million that day. And it's been my experience for the last 20 years, every crown tournament I've ever seen. So that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I would say or prince, because we have that happen a lot in Ontir. I don't know if it happens in other kingdoms. I did want to just say there's one question here, or a comment from Verena, that I'd sort of also like to a little bit unpack. She says, Duchess Verena, who's been around longer than me, so that's a long time, says the consort is the person to whom the combatant wants to bring honor and word fame. And while I agree with that to some respect, the consort can also do that to the fighter, especially if you are a person of note in your kingdom or in your principality. It doesn't always happen one way or the other. Like I said at the beginning, it's mutual. And if before Her Majesty Rifkin fought for me and before my husband fought for me, I would have people come and ask me to be a day consort, just like we talked about. I would have to talk to them about the fact that if I wanted to be their consort, first I'd have to talk to them about, okay, there's going to be a lot of visibility here. I am bringing word fame to that fighter. I am bringing myself, my persona, and I don't mean that from a historical standpoint, I mean from an overarching standpoint, to that fighter. And most of them don't really understand that. They don't understand that we march in an order of precedence. So guess where you're going to be? You're going to be second or third in the lineup because I'm a lion of Ontir, and so that puts a lot of visibility on you. You may be Joe Schmo from the Shire that I happen to like, and I would love to support and honor you, but I'm going to bring as much word fame to you as you are to me if you win. You're probably not going to win, but I just want to say I think it goes, it's like both ways, right? It's a two-way street.
You totally reminded me that I forgot that. So this is very interesting. My husband was King of Glenavon with the beautiful now Countess Morgana. I had moved to Ontir a few months ahead of him. And so he was King of Glenavon and traveling back and forth. And I had a squire, Ishvan, who's now a knight, fight for me. And exactly that happened. And I thought, you know what? I am going to give this young man the full treatment. I put up the full 20 by 30 tent. I had a whole ham, for crying out loud. I mean, we had a spread, we had all the banners, and we were third in line. And, you know, and he's on the night side, right? And he's like, what's going on right now? But it was actually a great experience for him as well. And I was thrilled to give him in that experience. And the joke at that time was because my husband was, you know, king of another kingdom. I'm like, Ishvan, you got to win because we got to be on stage at Penzic and people go, wait a minute, what's going on? But yes, I forgot that I had that experience with Ishvan, and same thing. It was, you know, great for me to have an opportunity to highlight this very amazing young man who has since gone on to do great things in Ontir.
Yeah, I believe who you're talking about is now Baron Ishvan. Right?
Yes, you are correct. You are correct.
He's our Baron, yeah.
And also Kashmir's Baron. Yeah, I would like to say that in the Barony of Terra Primaria, we also recognize consorts all consorts for all our champions. So yeah, we do recognize even like the ANS champions consort and the archery champions consort, as well as the our heavy fighter consort.
We've discussed how to be a consort. What are some of the danger things to look out for?
Oh yeah,
You had mentioned needing to have good communication prior
yeah, and
as to what it would actually mean. But are there some other things to look out for and be aware of as part of serving as a consort? It says
well,
the voice.
Who wants to go first?
I know.
Thinking.
I'm sure we all have ideas, but
Yeah. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I
One, two,
think-
three,
That
got it.
one,
Go.
You guys want a real giggle because I'm from Callantyre, and one of our queens was 17, about to turn 18, when one of our knights really wanted to fight and said, "Hey, can I fight for you in this tournament?" It was also her first event.
oh
By the end of the event, she was the crown princess.
yeah,
Wow. I
Yeah.
guess one thing I can think of is like, especially like in Ontario, you do have to sometimes travel into a different country. So you need to make sure you have your paperwork to be able to go into Canada if you need to go into Canada sometimes, because Ontario is part of, I think, Idaho and Washington and Oregon and Canada, BC.
yeah, that is true. I mean, you do have to make that consideration.
I would say also just on a tactical level is that you can talk about things beforehand. Well, you should talk about things beforehand. You should have clear understanding of what's going on and what your fighter needs and what you need and all of that sort of thing. And that not often, occasionally that can all go to shit on the day of because there's adrenaline and there's people not wanting to eat when they need to eat and people not having enough water and all of that. And I would say that a pitfall is addressing those issues in the moment and rather than just breathing through them and talking about it later. That day of, there are eyes on you. You are creating something for other people, like His Majesty said, and you just need to. If the plan doesn't go the way you thought it was going to, that's okay. Don't have a hissy fit on the side of the Eric. Right there, just take a breath and talk about it at your next time that you and your consort need to have that discussion or afterwards in private. Not that I've ever experienced that.
I would say that while being a consort's kind of a foreign to me, often Her like Excellency and I are running different aspects, and I understand of an event, and I can understand the stress of putting that on and having that poor communication. You know, sometimes I get a little irritable, and that communication goes right out the door. I see that very much being an issue for.
Yeah, that was like Her Excellency texted me on the side there. That's why. No, I mean it does because people's blood sugar goes all up and down. We're all focused on other things. I do think I want to point that out though. Like both Finn and I are very active. We do a lot of stuff, but we're both Pelicans. I'm a Laurel. I have a lot to do at events. He has a lot to do at events, but when he's fighting, that's what we're there for. I don't go to meetings. If there's a meeting scheduled during the tournament that I'm supposed to be at, I decline. I said, no, I'm here for this. This is my primary support at the moment. And it is for more than just him. It's for the kingdom. It's for the pageantry. and I'm focused on that, and I will just decline. I won't volunteer. And if one of us is autocrating, event stewarding, I'm too old to remember to say that. He won't fight like the or I will support him if he's event steward. It's really important that you have a focus. You don't have to do everything. You'll be in the SCA for a long time. Do one thing really well.
I think you bring up a good point too, is that I'm the same. Like if he is fighting, I am standing on the sidelines. And and obviously we've been together for 22 years this weekend, actually married for 20 years. And so it's and he has told me, multiple times that he gets that inspiration and from me being there and watching him. I think the only exceptions is, we have 4 children and when they were little and right. But, everything I can to be there, but you should also be aware that other people are watching you. And, I'm going to say something shocking. Sometimes people in tournaments are kind of cheaty. And I get angry about that, not because I care if he wins or not wins. I don't like people being unfair. Now, I'm not in the armor. I can do the, the armchair quarterback all day long, but I know that people are looking at my face. And so however I feel about it, I need to keep that under wraps. I can go in my tent, have my moment with my friends, whatever. I think that's something that you need to consider. And that will only continue the further you get into the tournament. We went and fought in the West. Actually, thank goodness he didn't win. Very close, because we would have been the pandemic crown of the West living in DC, which would have been a nightmare. But as the day went along, people became more aware of who I was, and there were more eyes. So I think that that's definitely one thing. I think the other thing that I was completely not prepared for coming out of our first reign, and I think this applies to crown or cornet or even being a baron and baroness, which is the hardest job in the SCA, period, hands down. Bless you that have done it. I will never, ever do that. So you have all my respect. What I did not expect is I was Lady Mary Grace, and then he won crown and we had a reign, and I'm like, whoo, I'm not that anymore. And I was a countess. You can never go back. And what I mean by that is there are certain expectations that people have of you since you have had that job and that role. And well, of course you should show up looking nice. You're a countess, you're a baroness. Well, of course you should help and participate and pitch in, because that's who you are, because that's who you were. And it may sound a little, poor little rich girl, right? But I wasn't prepared. I mean, I remember the day I stepped down the first time, got my county. I'm over there trying to take my tent down. And they're like, oh, no, Your Excellency, we'll do that. I'm like, I'm not queen anymore. I can take my tent down. No, we're going to help you with that. Oh, no, Your Excellency, you don't carry that thing, and it's people being lovely and nice. But it was a peerage transition for me that was like that, because I went from being, Lady Mary Grace to Countess Mary Grace, and I had not mentally prepared myself for what that next phase of the SCA was for me.
We've all touched on it of like just being there and being present when our fighter is on the field. Like with me and Sir Otar, the only exception is our kids. Sometimes I do services, but I will not do services if George is fighting for me in Crown, because he's fighting for me to be queen. I need to be there and be looking nice and being obviously supportive. Otherwise, if I'm not a good consort, people aren't going to think I'm a very good queen, because I'm not supporting the king while he's fighting. So I should probably look like I'm supportive. Otherwise, I'm not going to look like I can do my job if I get the job.
Okay. All right. I've been taking notes, so I made sure I say everything I want to say. Okay, first of all, Jocelyn over here, you asked, you're newish to the SCA. Well, first of all, welcome to the SCA. And you asked if inspiration is interchangeable with consorts. Yes, absolutely is. We use them both interchangeably. Inspiration. I think actually we're working on utilizing inspiration a lot more because it is not as soft gendered as consort can tend to be society wise or societal as we look at it. So yes, they can be interchangeable. I'm gonna be the mean person here, and I'll flat out say it. And he's in here, and I know he's listening. So I don't always go to the tournament field when Kaz is fighting. And oh my God, he's over there making. I knew he was gonna say crap in comments. Hello, hi, thanks. Yeah, I don't always go to the tournament. Now, to be fair, this goes back to the thing I said earlier about communication. So Casimir and I have been together for 7 years. Kaz can't fight in my kingdom. He can fight for me in Antir. There are a vast amount of tournaments, whether they be precedence bearing or honoring, as in, can you get something out of this? And then there are other ones that are just like for a day or just, I mean, we have one here where you become the Lord of the Pumpkin Gourd. That's great. But the other part of this is that he and I have progressed and been very successful in the SCA, not with each other. Our relationship is rather new when it comes to our SCA history and time in it. And so there are still things that I have commitments that I have to take care of and things that I have to do. I'm a peer. I've been the Royal Herald about 1 billion times. And I do have children. So that's a communication piece that he and I will have, absolutely, which if he's going to fight in a tournament, I will always be there for the first round, always. But if there are other things that I have to do, and again, this is not crown tournament, if there are other things that have to be done during the day, if I do have to serve, if I do have to have a meeting, if I do have to go in conclave with the crown, he knows where I'm going and what's happening and why I'm not going to be there for every round. But crown tournament is a completely other beast. Yeah, I am there every single time. Not always that turn. What else? I see. I told you I wrote down notes. Game face. Your Grace, Mary Grace. Yes, KA. I don't care if you don't like it. I love masks because you have no idea. I am sitting there like, what are you doing? What? I have a very expressive face, as I'm sure you've noticed, because
Masks do nothing for me. My eyes say it all.
I have learned to just this one the entire time. And so they've been very helpful but Her Grace is right that I am the same way. Crown tournament brings out the best and the worst in people. The absolute best and the absolute worst. And when you're a consort and you just saw your fighter get dealt not the greatest way, yeah, it's easy to want to be like, cool, we're next. I'm gonna take my earrings off. Let's go, bro. Like, he may have had to take it, but I don't have to. It's fine. You don't know how I roll. I'm from Utah. We do it differently. We really do. But that is something that I really had to learn. And even dealing with so many other things that we, Casimir and I will say that to each other all the time. Game face, bro. Because conversations that after the tells, you as a consort should, and an inspiration, I think, as your consort relationship progresses, you'll learn your fighter's tells. I know when Kaz is mad. He's got some tells that I have figured out. And when I see them on the field, like, all I can think in my head is, run, bro, run, you're in for it now. This is going to go badly for you. And I'm not going to tell you what they are. But that is right. That's a part when, as a consort, man, my job at that point is when he comes off the field to be like, not here, smile, let's go in the tent. Or would you like to take a walk to the truck with me? Or I think you need some water. Take it now. But that's
there's been a couple of tournaments where I've had to very much turn my RBF off.
Yes, and we all do it. We all have, because I also have a badge. So lift the eyebrows, touch your tongue to the top of your mouth so look you're pleasant at all times. It's fantastic. I'd like to rip your face off now. It's lovely. Good day. Those are the three things that I wanted to say to wrap up what everybody else was saying. So yeah, those are important parts of being a consort. And I think I saw one up here that I want us all to talk about. I'm just jumping in here. I hope you don't mind,
Oh,
Excellency.
please do.
It
Please
was
do.
Pumpkin's statement. How about, is it okay to say no to being a consort as well? Is it okay for a consort fighter pairing to dissolve their relationship if they aren't working out? Yes. Yeah. It is 100% okay to say no to being a consort, whether it's consort for a day or consort for a long time, because it's a commitment either way. It's a commitment for a day to be the inspiration and to be present, and it's a commitment for a long-term thing. And I think it's very important that both of you take that moment, and especially you have to do your own boundaries, right? So if that's not something that you're willing to do, it is better to say no, thank you. I appreciate the offer, but that's not a thing for me right now, than to get in the deep water and find out, oh, this was really not for me right now. And I was in a relationship with my previous relationship. He was my champion, and our relationship ended, and he was no longer my partner. We're really great friends, but that we actually stopped being champion and consort way before our relationship ever ended. And I think that is just as important, that you have those check-ins, and that's why communication is probably the biggest thing for being a consort, that you have to do it.
I know a couple of people who've gone to like third ever event and then left the event becoming princess.
Yeah. Yes, we one of my duchesses was the same way. It was like her third event, and she became a queen.
Just like to ask all fighters everywhere, just don't do
Yeah.
that to people. Just, it's not a, and I'm not going to win. You know what? Any given Sunday, Duke so-and-so could not show up. Like that, you have no idea. I've seen weird stuff happen, and it's, you know what? People make it work. And some people, they've had a great, but without fail, the people that I know that ended up being, either a queen or a baroness or a princess too early in their SCA career. Some of them had ended it. They're like, I'm never, right? As nice as, people are trying to be for them. Not too long ago, I think it was 2 years ago in Glenavon, this happened, and the crown prince and princess actually abdicated because the crown princess was like, I didn't understand what was involved. So fighters everywhere, don't do this to people.
So I would also like to talk about Pumpkin's comment about is it okay to say no or can it dissolve? So specifically, so when Her Majesty Rifkin was fighting for me, she fought for me for about 4 years. And when Baron Finn and I got together, it was a mutual discussion. Like, obviously, I'm not, anybody that's in Ontario knows this. She's a better fighter than Finn is. There was more opportunity for me to support someone that could actually maybe win the crown, but that wasn't why I was doing that. I was doing it because I wanted to support her, and then now I wanted to support the person that I was in love with and the person that I had a relationship with. So we actually, both of us, almost at exactly the same time said, I think it's time that, and we're both like, yeah, we know we were both on the same page, because I wanted to support him, and also because it was at that time, it was right after Inspirational Equality came out. He was allowed to fight for me for the first time. So there was a big change. And again, it goes back to that one thing. You have to communicate with each other. You have to talk to each other, and you have to set expectations and boundaries. So totally you can say no, and totally, if it's not working, you should dissolve the relationship. Just like any other relationship within the SCA. If you are an apprentice or a protege or a squire and that's not working, then you need to have a discussion. And if you can't have that discussion, then if you can't have that discussion with that person, then you shouldn't be in that relationship to begin with.
Because like, even though we're trying to not use the word inspiration anymore, you're still trying to inspire each other. And if you're not inspiring each other, then what's the point?
Yeah,
It's true. Go ahead.
Eduardo, I want to thank you, because I know while that inspirational equality may have come about on its own, without your help, it would have taken a lot longer. And I'm very appreciative of the changes that you've helped make.
It was a group effort, but thank you so much. And I mean, I think that's also something that people in same sex, or I don't like to say that really, but differently gendered relationships or differently gendered consorts, however we want to say, have to understand as well that there is still a big spotlight on you in some kingdoms. It's less so in Ontario now because we have 7 to 10 couples in crown every time. So it's less so now, but there's a spotlight on you, which also creates some tension. I in the early days when we had inspirational equality, and to some degree now, although it's stopped a little bit, people call you nasty names. And so you have, like the whole conversation around whether or not that person, whether my fighter's tape from his sword is on that helm and he didn't take that shot. There's also times where you have to compose yourself because someone is not acting appropriately, and you need to deal with that after you're off the field and deal with it. Yeah, it's still not pleasant in a lot of places.
Oh, yeah, I want to apologize to my wife because, she wasn't a long time Scadian when I drug her to be Baroness. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
And yes, I agree so much. That is not a job that being consort, your first event with the potential of being princess or queen is not a good idea. Please don't do that to somebody. I mean, let them enjoy the SCA first.
Make them be exchequer for 4 years and then make them the baroness.
Well, and don't obviously don't do that to your consort or to the person that you care about, but also don't do that to your kingdom. Don't throw that learning curve on your kingdom as well. That's difficult. Every kingdom has got its own nuances and all these things. I mean, Kaz and I have been together for 7 years. He's fought for me up there in Ontario, and we've always had conversations about are we push, are we not, are we not? No, we're not going to. Why? Because I still don't know enough about Ontario to feel comfortable. And how would that work? Like, I'd feel so weird about that. Don't put that on your kingdom either, because the SCA is 56 years of traditions and history and the good and the bad. And asking someone who has next to no idea what they're doing to now be the inspirational leader of an entire group of people that they don't even know, that's just like, why are you setting them up to eventually hate the SCA? Because that stressful time period is bad enough, but adding on to somebody who's really at this point even under a year, I think would be very difficult to ask anybody to do that. So don't do that.
As far as you being a consort in Ontario, I encourage you. The kingdom will rally around you.
Oh, well,
Word.
Casimir, are you listening? Are you listening, Cas? I told you guys we do it differently down here, so you may not be prepared for that. But
Unless you move to Bonnie Lake.
well, is what it is, man. Just do what we do. Yeah, I think that is something, truthfully, too. I think that a lot of couples need to have serious conversations about, and I mean couples as in fighting couples, as in not necessarily you and your significant other. I just mean whoever's going to fight for you. And I know her Grace mentioned it earlier. Are we actually going to do this today? Are we pushing forward? Is this our intent, or are we just here to participate in that which is Crown Tournament? Because the other part I think about being a consort is having that honest to goodness conversation, and sometimes instigating that conversation and remembering to pull your fighter back when they're like, man, I'm just in it today. I'm winning it. Okay. Do you remember how we were going to buy a new car? My new car will not work with a new car. No, we're not doing that. And I've seen couples in my kingdom who were on their way to go buy a house the following week and won Crown Tournament. And then it was like, oh, you're super lucky you get to move and you're a princess. I bet you're way excited. Those are conversations that as a consort sometimes we need to instigate as well the practicality of winning a tournament and what it is going to entail, because you want to win. I mean, especially you want to win because you want to win, and also you want to make them pretty prince and or princess. That's the thing. Is that going to work come Monday when you got to go to work? Did you just break your hand and now you have to type on a keyboard all day? But hey, good job, Your Highness.
To add on to that, being champion, when my husband's knight actually lives in Abacal, and he had one crown up in Abacal a couple years ago, and I had just had a baby, but my husband wanted to be its champion. I was like, well, we've got a baby and you're going to be going to Abacal, so if this is something you really want to do, just remember you're probably not going to see the baby much if you're going to be coming back and forth from Abacal.
Because that also goes back to that whole thing. Remember that tournaments, the prize to a tournament is not always a crown or a coronet, but there are always responsibilities in every tournament. Whether it is you have to now come to this event a year from today and you have to host the tournament, and now you're going to have to come up with your own thing, or have to go stand with the Baron and Baroness or the Prince and Princess. You're the person, you have to stand with them at court. Those are responsibilities that are inherent with the tournament you were just in. And now how does that apply to your consort? Does your consort now have to always take care of the other stuff while you have to go stand court? Again, it's that communication, which I just don't feel like I can stress it enough. One of the biggest things that ever was imparted to me about the responsibility of winning a tournament was actually from my current king, and he said winning any tournament is 51-49. I might hold that sword, but I can't do anything if they're not going to support me. And that 1% is just that killing blow. And every other bit of it, they have to be right there and ready to be in it and understand this is a job. I mean, that's one of the things I talk about all the time, especially peerage is a job. Being a consort is actually a job. It's great to be pretty or to be inspiration, but at the end, is that tournament going to force some responsibility onto you that you may not have been prepared for? So
yeah, I always say it's a really weird way to sign up for a kingdom office, right? So and the other thing, I think, kind of going back to what you were saying about potentially your fighter getting super riled up, and because it's hard, that in mine in particular, they're wired to want to win the thing, and then I'm like, yeah, but the thing that happens if you win the thing, right? And look, he's gonna fight till his arm falls off. I know that. But there's also times where and I can truly say this, and those that know my husband, he is the most honorable fighter on that field. I have seen him have people he doesn't hit blow off shots all day long. And his rule is, if you cleanly hit me in a target and I didn't block it, I'm taking it. And it means so much to me that he holds his honor and my honor in such high esteem that is the most important thing that he will do on that field. And he has fought in a crown tournament in a kingdom that shall remain nameless, that's not America. We flew to the country in which the tournament was being held. The king made a big speech about honor and chivalry, and they were doing round robin, and in succession, every single person he fought, after about 6 or 7 fighters, did not take a single blow he threw. And he walked over to me and I said, "Are we done now?" And he said, "Yes, we are." And we went to the crown. We thanked them very kindly for allowing them to participate. And we went and toured a 500-year-old city instead. Because no crown, no prize, no baronial champ, nothing is worth being dishonorable on that field. And I'm lucky I've never had to call him out on that at all. But that is so important to me too. Again, it's about eyes being on you. But at the end of the day, that's what counts, is you're inspiring that person, but they're also inspiring you. And it's the moments that are the most important thing apart about this relationship. If there's a wonderful outcome, amazing. But the thing I'm most inspired about, whether it's a local baronial tournament or crown, is my heart swells watching him fight, doing something that he's loved to do since he was 13 years old, and doing it with such honor each and every time he steps out on that field.
Yeah, imagine how like angry I would be if like my husband won from cheating, because that would just make me look horrible. That would make the consort look horrible, not just the
Fight
fight.
is video now, right? So
You what? I don't know what she said.
all fights are on video now too, so
Yeah,
it lives
that too.
on.
That is also a thing. But yeah,
That's true.
I'd be super pissed if my husband, not that it would happen, would like cheated to get through a crown, and then it's like, I'm the queen of a cheater, woohoo! I'd be so pleased. Sarcasm.
And I mean, does that happen sometimes? And I mean, are you now the crown because you may have got a little thick?
Yeah.
Might be. It happens. I will say, and he's in here, and I don't care if he gets all blushy about it. One of the best things that Casimir ever told me as his consort was when he was, someone had cheated him out of a round, and it was a qualifying round, so that was it. We were out, and I was mad for him because it was not a good shot. And yeah, I was all, ooh, I'm gonna cut you. And when he came back, and Casimir, who absolutely does have anger issues, came back, he flat out looked at me and said, I'm not mad because he did that to me. I'm mad because he did that to your honor. I'm mad because doing that, because you're my inspiration, reflects on you. And that, oh man, I'm getting all teary. I love you. That I got, man, that was, but that's such a beautiful moment to have. And for someone to remember that, is that it wasn't that they did me wrong. It's that they did it to your honor. And that's the part.
And
that's cool.
That's what everybody sees. So the loss doesn't matter at that point, right? And so that's like really my point, is that that fighter is really the bigger person in that moment, and you are even more honored than if they put a crown on your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's never been a time where I've been disappointed by him fighting in me. I've always been super proud. You're right, Mary Grace. Kaz is the same way. He will take stuff that he shouldn't take just because he should take it, and he does it. And it just is what it is. And there's never been a time where I've never been less than 100% impressed and honored to stand at the Eric for him. So Eduardo, you keep going. You got it, bud.
That's okay. So I just wanted to say, I think that there's opportunities. I mean, lots of us are talking about crown tournaments and the opportunity for consorts at that level, but you should practice first too, right? Like, you're not going to get it right the first time, and there's lots of opportunities besides crown for you to practice the communication that has to happen before you're in a situation where the stakes are higher. So practice that. And I would also suggest that for fighters, there's an opportunity for you to be a consort to your to your inspiration in other things. So for instance, even I've been Kingdom Arts and Sciences champion twice. It's a big job. It's a year long. You go everywhere in the kingdom. You have to, I was going to say put up, but I won't say that. You have to engage with 3 sets of royalty during that time period. And so before I would enter again, or before I would take on something like that, I would talk to Finn, because he would have to be my consort, even though it's not a fighting situation. Practice and find ways to practice being a consort, even if you're not a consort.
So we've been talking a lot about like heavy tournaments and crown tournaments. We haven't talked hardly at all about what a consort looks like in an ANS situation. What does that type of support look like?
Man, Kay, I'm gonna jump in on this because this is actually was part of my TikTok rant. So some of you guys saw it already, so you know. We're gonna go right back to the communication part. Because I brought this up, and I think this is one of the biggest missteps when it comes to consort relationships, and I mean champion and consort relationship, fighter, whatever. Your consort didn't get into the SCA to stand pretty next to an Eric. I'm here to tell you. Your consort got into the SCA because they have their own interests. They have their own things they want to do. They have things outside of standing next to the tournament and watching you fight. You need to absolutely support them in that. I am a bardic laurel. You're damn right I expect Casimir to come watch me sing. It happens that he likes it when I do it, but he better be there because that's what I do, including I'm also a herald, which means if I'm heralding, you at least better be in the back of court drinking something and being like, that's my girl right there. And he's done it before, but he supports what I do in the SC because it's just as important that I get the support I need in my endeavors as he gets the support as a fighter. And if you, I'm flat out, fighters, if you are not having this conversation with your consort, finding out where they want the support, you better start now. Practice. Eduardo said practice. Do it now. Find out what they want to do. Because again, that's why I said, I'm not always standing next to the Eric for every tournament. Sometimes there are things I want to do. Sometimes there are things I have to do. And you absolutely can support me by funding my fabric or expensive drinks while I'm doing a scribal part thing late at night. There are multiple ways you can support your artisan, mostly with your credit card, and I suggest you just do it. Don't ask me how much new jewelry I need or that I need more temple rings. Just remember how pretty I look when I wear them.
Yeah, I did ANS as a teenager, so I didn't really have a consort. I just had my mom. And like sometimes when you got to present something, you may have forgotten something and they're going to be there to go and get that for you while you're still in the middle of presenting. Or like they're going to make sure, did you pack your project? Is your project actually in the car? Do you have a nice outfit to wear for your presentation? Is it clean? Okay. Did you eat before your presentation? All right, cool. Love you.
Or even just, hey, I'm going to pick up dinner on the way home from work tonight because I know you got a big night of sewing because we're getting ready for this weekend and you're making garb for me. So I got dinner. I will take care of it. Or I will take the children out of the house before you murder all of us because you've set that gore 5 times. And if you do it again, the house will also burn down. Like that's the support as well. Like, man, I'm going to keep the kids out of the garage while you're making shields. So that's important. I'll murder you if I have to stamp this fabric again. So that's also support that you can offer. And I mean, I know I'm trying to be funny about this, but there is a very sharp edge of truth to that where support also doesn't necessarily have to happen on the day of the event. It is continual support even before we ever get there. Yeah. Oh, Casimir said it's okay to stop a tournament too for honoring your lady. It's true. There was the first tournament he ever fought for me here in Artemisia. It was a King's Champion, and they weren't doing the salute the crown, salute the person, salute the one whose honor you bear. And we were like to the 3rd fight, and it was his first time to fight ever. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going to go any farther. Said some really poetic words and said, I'm not going to go any farther until I can honor my lady. And man, that was super romantic. He won that day, just saying. Anyway. I think, but I mean, am I wrong? You guys, you're also, everybody here's a consort. I think that that's important. The support doesn't just happen day of. And one of the best ways you can honestly support your consort, especially if there is some transactional stuff going on, like you fight for me, I'll make you clothes. Cool. Did you help pay for that fabric? Because I'm here to tell you, it's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Again, people who know me, this will not be shocking. I'm the organizational end of the operation. So I'm like, I've registered for the event. I've made sure your membership is renewed. I've turned in all the stuff. I'm making all your clothes. I have the list of what needs to be packed. He's like, great, feeding the kids, making sure people do homework, getting them to bed. Here's the list. Okay, I'm packing the car, right? Like, so we have very clear delineated roles and jobs that work for us. Like in some, it may be reversed for some people, right? But you know, without fail, especially when the kids were younger, you know, I would be on the side of the field. I would be making sure he had the water. Do you have your shield? Like, he doesn't like people standing in front of him when the fighting's going on. It's like, we're trying to watch the fight. So I'm like, excuse me, would you mind going over here, please? Right. You know, I'm doing all the things. The minute the tournament's over, win, lose, or draw, he goes back to the tent and he's with the kids for the next 2 hours. Right. Like, so it's very, you know, and again, back to what we said earlier, it's the communication, but we've slotted in, this is the thing that I'm really good at, I can make happen. This is the thing I need you to do, so I can make the thing that you need me to do happen. And it just works. But it's the communication and supporting each other. So
Aoife, we love you too. I'm reading comments. Have we gotten all the questions answered? Did we miss anything? No, we're all scrolling. Duke Floki from My Kingdom does say, don't enter crown if you don't want a crown. Yup.
Oh,
That's true.
I do want to go back to Pumpkin's comment about turning down consorts. Yes, I would also like to tell Pumpkin it is also okay for you to turn down officer jobs too. I know you tend to collect those, so
Okay.
Hey, I'm feeling kind of called out here.
just
Look.
because there's an opening and somebody asks you to do it doesn't mean you have
I'm
to.
kicking him for you.
Pumpkin, I don't know you, Pumpkin, but I've offered to teach a class on TikTok called How to Say No Without Feeling Guilty, The Path of Service.
I believe
I'm
I
happy.
just saw one of either yours or somebody else's about that. It's like how to sing. You're being salty.
Yeah, it's me. That's totally me.
Okay, I believe I did see that one then. That was
She was
fantastic.
me.
salty. It was definitely her down there.
It was me.
I will
Yeah,
totally
no,
follow
but
you
yeah,
again
stop.
on Facebook. Or on
See,
TikTok.
sprinkle, sprinkle. It is okay. You don't have to say yes to being a consort. You don't have to say yes to being an officer. You can absolutely say no. Again, we're no longer giving we're no longer giving time to things and people that do not serve us best. And if that is a relationship that's not going to serve you and it's going to cause more harm, respect your own boundaries and say no, thank you.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, this is a game. We need to remember that a lot of the time. And like, if you don't have time or energy to serve right now, then don't, or you're not going to have a good time and you're going to want to leave. And then we'll all be very sad that you left.
Yeah,
my motto, which is somebody lovely did me in Latin, is if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So, you know, I very early on, the joke was I could always say no. It was just usually followed by the word problem. No problem. But what I've learned is I can't help you with that, but let me help you network. Let me help you find a person that would love to do that, or maybe I can get you going and get you started. And then, oh, hey, you have somebody that wants to volunteer. Let me mentor them a bit. So there's ways in which you can still help, but not be the sole responsible person for doing the thing.
So I'm not sure who said, I'm trying to look in the comments. You said somebody said don't enter unless you're prepared to be crowned.
Yeah,
I think
so
that's a little, there's some cultural differences
So that's Duke
depending
Floki
on
in
the
My
kingdom that you're in.
Yeah,
And
for
that
sure.
I think
That's
that yes,
mine.
you should definitely have the discussion with your fighter and with the consort, that communication piece.
Uh-oh,
Did he freeze?
he did freeze.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I'm like, did he freeze or is it me or is it
Yeah.
my internet connection? So that was Duke Floki, and I'll explain. That's Duke Floki in My Kingdom.
Oh,
Again, our small, super small kingdom. If we get 16 combatants in My Kingdom in Crown Tournament, that's a banner Crown Tournament for us. So for us, it literally is Mary Grace, we talk about it all, it really isn't any given Sunday kind of scenario. It just depends on who's going to show up. And we've had some people who went there and were like, yeah, I'm just happy to be here today. And I just won. This is great. So that's why in our kingdom, it is really one of those.
Right. I think it's cultural, right? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
before Avacol left, we would have the largest crown tournament that we had was 123 fighters, which means there's 240 participants, which I always like to remind people that when they say, oh my God, there's 80 people in the lists, I'm like, actually, there's 160 people in the list.
Right.
That's true.
Because they have each of them have a consort. But it's cultural, right? But you do have to have I'm not saying no, you don't. Like, I agree with the sentiment of you shouldn't enter unless you're prepared to win. However, in On Tier, it's more about the process of you are in the tournament because you want the exposure to fight. You want to be able to fight the best. You want that platform to fight because everybody's watching. And you are part of the person that wins. You've been a part of that. It's different in On Tier than it is in other kingdoms. But we have even with Abacol gone, we have 80 fighters, 160 people in the lists. That's a lot.
Yeah, it's On Tier's a freak of nature in that way. I would say the majority of the kingdoms are not in that situation. And one of the things when we were crowning Glenavon, it became like this like vicious circle. So people were afraid to fight because they were afraid to win. And then so like nobody fought. And then like the tournament was super tiny. Right. And so we tried to come up with ways to encourage young and up and coming fighters by adding 2 other, we were the second crown of Glenavon and instituted 2 other awards. So one was the Banner of Valor. And so this was for like the person who you're like, dang, I didn't know you could fight like that, right? They went above and beyond that day. And then the Wreath of Chivalry. And the Wreath of Chivalry actually is given by the Queen, and that becomes their armored champion. And so by doing that, like encouraging other people to participate, we, to try to get the list a little bigger so that it doesn't become this self-fulfilling prophecy. If there's 12 people, your odds are real good if somebody trips and falls or something happens. So yes, definitely a lot of kingdoms, the conversations are important going in because the likelihood is much higher than a place like On Tier where the knight comes in with his 4 squires behind. He's squires, you're all fighting in the crown tournament. They're like, okay, right? It's very different.
And to be fair, in my kingdoms specifically, I would say that this I know everybody's gonna be so shocked. This is all gonna come back to the communication part, right? Because in my kingdom, yes, as a consort and a champion, because I've been fought for in this kingdom as well, we will have those, okay, let's actually talk about this. Are we going to make it? Even with the any given Sunday type of a scenario, are we really at the level that we are going to pull out and potentially win crown tournament today? Yes or no? And that's a bare honest communication that you have to have with your consort and your fighter. And you got to be able to say, I love you, or I think you're great. We're not making it today in crown, and that's okay. And I think everybody should absolutely have the experience of fighting in crown, which actually brings me to another point. If that's what you want to do, don't fight in crown because you think you have to. Fight in crown because you want to, because it is an experience. It is an opportunity. So you should absolutely have that moment. And conversely, I'll say this too. Mary Grace, I know you talked earlier about how you threw a Baroness, which I followed your blog forever. I just need you to know that. So I watched that whole thing go down. Your tutor hits were just amazing. In my kingdom, I know I talked about this. There's not a lot of fighters who don't have consorts already. Don't be afraid to talk with your current consort and see how they feel about you fighting for somebody else. There are so many people in the SCA of all different gender identities who have never had that opportunity. And I'm here to tell you it is so special and can be monumental in that day of being really the inspiration and center of somebody's world, even if it's not romantically inclined. Providing that experience for someone, that shining moment can be it can be wonderful. It can. And especially, I know at one point we talked about trying to do a tournament in our kingdom where we invited fighters to have a different consort for the day, not necessarily your own personal one, to get someone else. And I know in a lot of other kingdoms, they actually have, matchmaking consorts where if you don't have a fighter or they don't have a consort, we'll pair you up with one. I love that idea because, oh man. Anyway, there you go. Now talk.
one of my greatest joys in the SCA is that Havert was able to give the gift of being queen to Morgana. So if you do not know Morgana of the Mist of Glenalvin, Countess Morgana, she is one of the most beautiful and wonderful souls I've ever had the chance to encounter. And when I first approached her, I said, Havert's going to make you queen. And she laughed, and I was like, not kidding. And so again, we had them over for dinner, she and her husband, because he had to, and he's since passed, but he had to be in on all of this too, right? Like, because he wasn't going to be king. So it's, you know, there was an interesting conversation, but it was a gift that we were in a place to give to her, and in turn she was a gift to that kingdom. She's like everybody's mom and one of the most amazing people ever. And again, he won that tournament just as we found out we were moving, so we kind of said she was our parting gift right to the kingdom. And it's so special, whether it's at that level or, again, as you said, at a local level or a local tournament, to give somebody that opportunity to be the inspiration to the person on the field is so special.
I think another conversation to have with your fighter as the consort, you could bring this up. Hopefully they are thinking about it, especially if you're not Mary Grace and Havoric, or if you're not at that level, that you should have a conversation with your fighter about victory criteria. Because I teach a class called How to Win Arts and Sciences Championship every time you enter. I've only entered twice and I've won twice, but that's a whole other story. But it's really about defining what you think winning is. And if it's something that is outside of your control, it's not part of the criteria. It can't be part of the criteria. You're winning. What you think is victory and what you think is a win needs to be constantly thought through and constantly changed, because you'll go through different phases as consort and fighter. So, like, what are you going to learn today when you're out on the field, or what do you hope to accomplish from from as a fighter's perspective, and as a consort? What does a win today look like for me? Because only one person can be king and only one person can be queen, if we're talking about that kind of tournament, right? Same thing with champion. If you're arts and sciences champion, only one person's going to win. So you can't say, my victory criteria is if I win. Well, in Ontier, 80 other people are actually going to lose. So what is your victory criteria? It's a really important conversation to have in all aspects of inspiration, not just in the fighting.
Yeah, because even though Otar has never won, he wins. He got to go out and play with his friends and not have to babysit the kids. He got to go out and have a good time and had a babysitter. And all he had to do was just go play in the sun, have a good time. He got fed, he got watered. He had a great day. He won.
Yeah, we had Duchess Eleanor, who is Ontier's current ANS champion, teach a very similar class, like conditions of victory. And that is a good point. Like when you are fighting those upper tier tournaments, I mean, it may not be a victory to be the last person. Because you are fighting for a job, and not everybody is necessarily suited for that job.
Realistic victory conditions, I think, is absolutely, Eduardo, what we're talking about is really having that conversation again of, like you said, sometimes it's not up to you whether or not you win. You only get 50% of that dialogue with someone else. They're going to control the other 50%, and it may not be up to you how it goes in the end, and you kind of just have to deal with that. So instead of setting your victory condition, and I feel like we've now gotten into coach's corner a little bit, instead of setting your victory condition to, well, I want to win the hat. I mean, great, everybody wants to win the hat. The person who doesn't even come to the event wants to win the hat. The newcomer who's never done this ever also wants to win the hat today. The reality is that's Probably not likely for most of the people. So again, set a different victory condition. I think any fighter will tell you that even a bad day of fighting is better than a good day of sitting at home because they love it so much. Or else, why would they go through all of that broken bodies, pains, and sweaty, gross stinkiness? And I want to be a fighter, so, but they do, you know what I mean? That's the whole point. Like, set a different victory condition and set it with your consort. Today, I want to be victorious this many times, or I want to only try this weapon. I love it when people try different weapon styles in Crown Tournament. I love to see that because Crown Tournament is going to be the place where you are absolutely going to get the high fights, right? Because everybody wants, again, best and worst of everybody, but everybody's going to pull out all the stops in Crown Tournament. That's when you, and if you want to really try something out, Crown Tournament will give you an idea of that litmus test. Conversely, too, and I think we keep talking about heavy fighting because the ultimate prize for a martial champion in the SCA is Crown Tournament. That does not discount in any way, shape, or form rapier fighters at all. And if you are a consort for a rapier fighter, even and especially, I think you have a little bit more of a difficult job because it is now they're not going to have the spotlight the same way heavy fighters do. It is just as important and even more so to attend your rapier fighter just as much. And to make sure that you are giving them the attention, because so often, and I know every single one of us here, we can probably say, how often has it been all the heavy fighters are on the main field, but the rapier guys are tucked behind the Kingdom Pavilion. They're not even in an Eric. They're kind of over here. And so a lot of times, especially rapier, I know tons of rapier fighters who don't have consorts because of that, because there's not the big shiny that comes involved with it. So Pumpkin just said anything. Now we all got to read what Pumpkin said. Hold on.
So I did fight rapier as a teenager too, and I fought in 2 separate tournaments at an Ursulmus, and my mom was my consort for one of the tournaments, but then I picked a baroness whose name I'm not going to say, to be my consort for another one, because I think it was you had to have a high ranking person as your consort. So I had asked this person, I don't remember what kind of tournament it was, but you had to have like a baroness or someone of high esteem to be your consort. And as a person who did fight in fencing, she didn't pay attention to me, and that kind of hurt my feelings.
No, I think that's valid. I think it's, and this, again, this comes down to I've been a consort for a day for a rapier fighter, and Casimir wasn't there, and it was kind of like Mary Grace said, man, this was somebody who wasn't my normal consort, but I absolutely gave that star treatment too. Being attentive, being at the field, being all those things, because that person is fighting for my honor, and the very basic least I can do is at least stand there and give them my attention for their fight. I will say that is absolutely something that makes my blood boil, especially when we're in big tournaments, when you're not at the Eric. Like, they are fighting for you. You go over there and you stand there for 2 seconds. It's fine.
Yeah, especially since it was one of those ones where you have to be showy with your death, and I had a very showy death, and she missed it.
I would never do you like that, girl. I promise.
If I ever take up fencing again, I'll ask you.
All right. Okay. I got you. Pumpkin said, would you all say that there's a need for some type of community educational resource space for champions and their inspiration, or those seeking a champion inspiration to share their experiences and learn from each other? Yes, it's not a one-way fits all, but there are some very basic things that this discussion has agreed on are something all should be starting from. Thoughts? Eduardo, you're shaking your head yes. I see you.
Yeah, I think this is a good start, but it does, like, I think that at the local level, there needs to be more discussion about this. There needs to be more education. There needs to be more modeling at the branch levels so that it can filter up to the kingdom level. And with branch, I mean anything from shire, barony, principality. There should be discussions around it. We need to have more discussions in general at all levels about all things in the SCA, and this is one of those things that we should be talking about.
I think one of the things that's interesting, and again, sorry, Ontario is an outlier here, but most kingdoms have a concept of, you submit a letter of intent and in advance, and you request permission. And with COVID, one of the things that Atlantia has done, both their current majesties and their previous, is they actually had like a Zoom meeting with everybody that put their name in the hat. And they said, because, let's be honest, the game has changed. So we're going to begin to go back to physical events. Virtual is not going away, right? It's just not. And I think there are many beautiful things that have come out of that. I mean, look at universities now, right? Like people from all across the known world can attend each other's universities. And so I think there's a lot of amazing things that have come out of a not fun time, and that's not going away, and expectations of what you have to do. And again, hats off to His Majesty Atlantia. It's you guys have had a very challenging reign, I know, and so whether it's at the baronial level, which I think does happen more often, right? You'll have like town halls or conversations, but I think at all those different levels, if there is some sort of accolade attached, having the current person in that role, whether it's Kingdom ANS, like, hey, I'm going to have a meeting at this event, talk about what the job is and what you and your family can expect, that kind of thing, because it's super interesting, the tournament that His Majesty Atlantia won. A whole bunch of people attended that meeting, and not everybody ended up fighting in the tournament because they were like, oh, I didn't quite realize what was happening behind the scenes, which to me is ultimately your job, right? As crown or coronet, is to bring the show to the people and leave the ugly and all that behind closed doors. And I think that's a good thing, right? People got their eyes open to what they could expect and decided, what, we're going to opt out. But I believe His Majesty wants to make a comment as well.
Yeah, you're welcome, Your Majesty.
Thank you, guys. I'll just expound on a little bit about what Her Grace was talking about. My parent monarchs, Anton and Lennon, did a great thing for us in the fact that they got everybody together, and they didn't just get on a call and talk about it. Like, they made a presentation. There was slideshows, like, this is how we've done what we've done during the reign. These are the positions involved. These are the things. This is the time we spent during the week doing reign stuff. So they gave us a serious breakdown on the expectations that it was going to take to be the crown. And then they were real with everybody, saying, and this is what we've had to do, and whoever takes our place, it will be harder because you will have to balance in person and virtual. And let's see, it was still today, I'm 27 days from the end, 3 events. They weren't lying. It's been hard. There have been really hard decisions to be made, but we knew that signing up for the crown tournament, and we're willing to do the job. Though I did tell them that they kind of sold us a bill of goods the whole time I'm in the SCA. They tell you the crown's great, but it's hard. But it's just like having a baby. You don't know what it's like until the baby's screaming in the next room.
I can definitely see that.
So so in my kingdom in Artemisia, 2 things. Number 1, Mary Grace talked about this. We have to do letters of intent in order to fight in Crown Tournament. And there's a whole separate portion for consorts specifically, that you have to agree to all of the exact same things that the fighter is doing, and including you have to list any offices that you have and who will be your drop dead, who is going to take over. And I have seen couples been respectfully asked not to participate because there's not a drop dead for the consort's office, because they don't have anybody and they didn't have a plan. And so it was the find a replacement, or maybe really consider this. So the consort in my kingdom has to provide that same sort of commitment on paper when we submit letters of intent. I was also a part of a lot of conversations because I was the digital herald all through the pandemic when people submitted their letter of intent for the very first crown tournament, where the king queen at the time met with all of them in Zoom. I set it all up for them, where they were like, let us explain exactly what has happened in the last year and a half and what we have gone through. And also, just so you know, Feia says no. So ask somebody else. So if you win, it doesn't come with Feia. So just remember that. You'll have to find somebody else to run all your virtual stuff. And we also definitely had a lot of people who I would have said were always a crown contenders, didn't participate because they were very much aware of what was going to come with a possible now coming out of pandemic reign. That changed a lot of things. And I think something that occurred to me that I don't necessarily know if this has ever happened, but I feel like, Eduardo, you were talking about how do we start this? How do we model it? I can only tell you about my experiences as a consort because this is as far as I've ever gotten. Her Grace has been queen. I never have. I've been fought for multiple times. You've been fought for multiple times. We've all have. But all I can ever tell you about being a consort is based off my own personal experiences. So I can say, this is what I think you should do as a consort. This is what's worked for me. This is what worked for Casimir. This is always working for Casimir. I think a thing that I would love to see is, in my kingdom, one of the things that happens towards invocation time is that the fighters and the consorts will all gather around the crown, and the crown will absolutely do that part where they say, fight with honor, fight with dignity, fight with chivalry. Remember, the eyes of the known world are upon you. Fight with all these things for you. Look at the person whose honor you are bearing today. And I feel like that is a perfect, poignant moment. And I would love to say this to any queen. That's your cue. That's your cue now to rope the consorts in, or sorry, that's the sovereign and consort, not just queen. Sorry, getting better. Working on my language. That's the perfect cue, though, for the consort or the crown to say, and consorts, our expectation of your behavior today is thus. Attend your fighter, be the inspiration. This is what we want to see. If we're going to set what we want our fighters to do, we should absolutely set what we want our consorts to do as well. Do we want you to attend them? Do we want you to attend the queen? Do we want you to do these things? Man, make that known. That's the best way to lead by example, right? Because again, I can tell you how I do it. May not work for you, but how do we lead? How do we do that? And I think it's just by having that dialogue and that conversation. And that's, to me, seems like a perfect way to start it out.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the very beginning where we said that we all agree, it's an individual relationship, that it's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different as you progress through your relationship with that person. It's an individual relationship. And that's why the communication is so important, because it's going to be different for every person, for every tournament, for every time you're a consort.
Can I tag on to that? You guys really have to go in with a plan for communicating with your retinue. Having been retinue for my squire brother when he won like that because there wasn't one, it's a whole different story. If you don't have that, all of a sudden it's like, okay, we know what the sign language is. While you're looking at, you have to have those baseball signals. You have to have who's going to take care of who. It's a huge add-on. Don't worry about me, worry about her because I'm going to be out there. Things like that.
Well, and honestly, so often that falls to the consort. That falls to us, like Mary Grace said, she's the one who does the organization. I absolutely am the organizer in our relationship. I am the organizer. I'm sure all of us are. And honestly, that's a skill set that we have to develop, and we have to have that plan ready just in case it all goes the way we want it to. Yeah. Yeah. We gotta know.
All I'm saying is if my husband were fighting in Crown and he's about to go into finals and somebody has to send a runner to come and find me to process into finals, I'm not doing my job.
Right. That's true. Conversely though, not even to say that there isn't a reason that you wouldn't be there. If that were the case, it would not be something under your control that has taken you away. And if
the
your
only
husband
reason
was
why
in
I'm gone
finals,
is because I'm changing a butt.
Right. And if you're in finals, I believe we're holding finals. If you got to take care of that, because nobody wants you to come back to the field halfway.
And I think that the four of us are very agree that we're there and watching and at the side of the Eric and are present emotionally and mentally and physically, but that might not be the case for you and your consort. That might not, like, that's the discussion. Like, I know people who it's too much for the fighter or it's too much for the consort to do that until finals, obviously. Right? Like, that can be an arrangement. I think we should all, like, I don't want to say back off a bit, but we all agree, the four of us are all like, be there, be present, do this, unless you have to change your child's diaper. But that might not be the case for everybody.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I know some people personally as well. We may be thinking about some of the same people that it actually stresses each other out. And so I'm respectful of that if that's your agreement, and that works for the both of you. I think His Majesty also brought up a great point here in the chat about sometimes you'll hear the crown or the coronet remind the consorts, like, if you don't feel your fighter's behaving properly, like, you can and that's a very period thing. So I've taught a class at Sport of Kings about like period galleries and tournaments in the 14th century, and you probably have seen these images of the the ladies in the gallery pointing down to the marshals, and they could say, that one, he's out, right? And I think that's an interesting. I think it gets back to like you're honoring each other in that moment. And I've never had to have that conversation, but I have friends that had, like, hey. And I think, maybe you mentioned you're pissed off right now, so you might want to take a walk around the tent, come back. I think the closest thing ever was when Howard got his arm broken in the middle of the tournament, and he decided to duct tape his sword to his hand because he wasn't quite sure it was broken, and he was going to try and keep fighting. And I was like, what is wrong with you? But yeah, I would agree, like, that's a very personal, like, whether you're like there on the side or not. It's important to me. And I think the other thing too, as a consort, that I like to do it, especially if the other consort is there upon the completion of the bout, is to go in and talk to them. Your fighter did a great job. I have a tradition of bringing roses, and I love to bring a rose to the other consort. And your fighter did you great honor. Thank you so much for being here and participating today. Because I think it's nice for them as well to you have a bit of a camaraderie together, right? Often you maybe stand together, which is nice, and things too, because you're both kind of sharing that same. It doesn't matter how many times he does it, and if it's like you said, if it's for a baronial tournament or crown, I always get the butterflies for him, and so it's nice to have that shared experience with the other inspiration.
Yeah, we stand by each other here. But again, we don't have very big pools, so we all know each other. So a lot of it's like, hey girl, what do you think is going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know, whatever. You going to win? I don't know. You going to win? Sure. I mean, cool, whatever. All right, good times.
Yeah, I'll totally.
Oh yeah, they're
I
fine.
usually, if he's fighting with a friend, and their consort is a friend of mine, I'll usually go and like link arms or hold hands or something and hug each other and go, okay, good job, love you.
Right.
I think there's a consideration that we need to have in the future for our consorts. And earlier, Mary Grace had talked about developing that poker face where wearing the mask. But we have a new aspect that we've also added into our crown tournaments, and that we have video cameras everywhere, and that's picking up sound. So a catty conversation you might have had 2 years ago is probably not one that you want to have now, because it's going to go around the world and go viral if you say the wrong thing. So,
and it's happened.
Yeah,
it has happened. Yeah, I know we've all been watching something and then suddenly went, someone go talk to them right now, because we can hear every word of this. And to be fair, it's not always bad either. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes we're talking about things that isn't necessarily for public purview, and we absolutely need to be Kaz and I were just talking about this the other day, and I think this absolutely goes along the way. And Mary Grace just talked about it a little bit ago. Especially if you're that person who maybe had that questionable blow, it's probably on video. So,
And the person holding the live stream and said the F word when something I didn't like didn't go my way.
I also swore really loud one time during a live stream, but they crashed through the Eric into the table where my laptop was at, and I may have yelled out.
Yeah, no, I was the
F
one
word
live
really
streaming, so you could
Yeah,
hear
me too.
every little sigh.
Yeah, so, but you're right, Excellency. That is important to know that a lot of times, I mean, it wasn't such a big thing in the before times or even, 10 years ago where I've seen the catty conversations or have witnessed them of consort to consort. Sometimes it's not the fighters on the field having the less than stellar behavior. Sometimes it is consort to consort. And I think some of us have seen that too, and also not okay. Don't do that. No, this has been fun. How about you guys?
I think so too. I think we should wrap it up though, and I'm going to give everybody a chance to give some final words. If people want to hang around afterwards, I'll turn off the recording and we can chat as much as we want. But I think perhaps we'll go in reverse order from our introductions. So I'll start off with Eduardo, if you have some final words or some final thoughts.
Oh, was I last?
Yeah, you were last.
Final words. Have fun.
Thank you.
I mean, that's really like, ultimately, we have to all remember, like Mary Grace's motto. My motto is non est qui sid quid potare, which is it's not who you are, it's what you wear. But I think Mary Grace's is much better. Is like, have fun. You gotta have, like, if you're not having fun, don't do it. So like, whatever you do as a consort or as a fighter, you should be having fun.
Thank you. Feia?
Oh man. I think my parting words are consort relationships are complex, and your consort relationship needs to be just as different and unique as anybody else's, and find the best way forward that works for you and your person by talking it out. And if you are uncertain of how to have those conversations, maybe consider that, or see if you can find an intermediary, because again, if it's not fun for you, we are no longer giving time to things and people that cause us stress. So, and my motto is I know right, which is also I know right and I know right. So that was one of the things I used to always say. It was both of them. I know right, and also I know right. So I know the way it should be. Yeah, have fun, be a good consort.
Thank you, Feia. Mary Grace?
Yeah, so yes, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. I think that no matter if, again, you're the inspiration for an ANS champion or someone who's participating in martial activities or equestrian, whatever it is, no matter what the end result, each and every time it's an opportunity for you to honor each other and to live the dream. Crown Tournament happens to be my favorite event because of the pageantry and the beauty. And every time I attend a tournament, I imagine that first tournament and what it must have been like. And it transports me. But it could be like that if you're on the equestrian field or if you're seeing the hounds race at Gulf War. And so, that should be the fun part, right? If there are strings attached to winning a thing, again, that's things you should plan and you should talk about. And it's not vain to say, okay, if we won, who would be our head of retinue? That's just practical, right? No matter who you are. So like I've heard people say, I can't believe you're picking people, maybe he won't win. I'm like, well, I'm a planner. It's what I do. And it's for the best for the kingdom or, the principality. If I got a plan ready, right? So talk about those things, but that enjoy the moment of participating in whatever that thing is. because that's such a beautiful opportunity, no matter what the prize or the end result. I am super blessed that I fell in love with somebody that's very athletically talented. And I have had more opportunities than so many people in the SCA, and I treasure each and every one of them. I remember standing on the stage at Penzic the first time I had the opportunity to be queen of Atlantia, and looking out at all the people and thinking, how few people are ever going to stand in this spot. And that gets me emotional to this day, but I'm just as proud of being able to be that consort if he fights in the local baronial tournament, because it's about a shared experience that we have together that brings us closer. And that can be if it's your best friend, or if it's your romantic partner, or somebody that you just really feel inspired by, or a new person that you want to be like taken in by that dream, to have one of those magic moments that I'm sure we've all experienced. So long-winded way to say, enjoy the moment, enjoy the experience, no matter what the end result, no matter what the potential prize at the outcome, because just having that relationship with that person is magic and special.
Thank you, Mary Grace. And Halldora?
I'm gonna very much miss being a consort since my husband has no interest in the SCA anymore. But I mean, it's still always something that I'll have strong feelings about, because of like just because I don't want to see. I mean, I have no control over it, but I don't want to see somebody go into it their second event and then have a huge responsibility their second event. That's just mean. And like I just want to make sure people are like checking in with each other and making sure it's something they want to do, and checking in is important. Check in.